soft wordage, and a reader well established in the spiritual community, join me for Achieve TV every Wednesday on your concerns, what's making you feel blocked, career, love, romance, and angel message readings. Just click on the little Achieve Rainbow TV on achieveradio.com homepage and watch your reading live as it happens. The number to call in to the Pink Chakra Psychic Line is 888-235-7374.
Psychic radio, holistic radio, spiritual radio. This is achieveradio.com. Follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/achieveradio.
This is Anne-Marie, and you are listening to Achieve Spiritual, Holistic, and Self-Improvement Radio with Eric Linter, National Astrologer. Hello, Eric, and I'm Anne-Marie.
Hi, Anne-Marie. Happy New Year.
Thank you. How are you today, and what have you made any New Year's resolutions?
No, I stay away from New Year's resolutions.
Yeah, me too. It's doomed for failure. It's like, this year I'm going to lose 5 pounds, and I'm going to call every friend that I know and be really more in touch with everybody. And I do a real good start, and then it seems to fade away. But so I wanted to say that today I really was hoping that you might give us some star knowledge on what's going on around the planetary alignment for the 3. I have 3, but I know there's probably out there people that are saying, well, what's with Trump, Hillary, and Bernie? What about my guy? And I'm hoping that you'll be able to give me some information on them.
Well, I can certainly give you some info on the big 3. As far as the other people, I have not looked at their horoscope charts. So much like my New Year's resolutions, I'm going to let those other men and women slide.
Yeah.
The stars these days, I really like what they're doing for Bernie Sanders. Notably, Jupiter in Virgo, I think, is really putting the wind in his sails. He is a sun sign Virgo, and Jupiter famously is the planet of education, campaigning, teaching, putting ideas and information out. And he seems to be enjoying a great deal of success with that.
Okay. And you now on the caucus day, which I should have written that down. I didn't. Do you know the caucus day by any chance?
I do not.
Let me just check on that. I'm just wondering now, what would their that specific day, would it resonate with any kind of specific dynamic that people would be prone to be looking for, or prone to put one ahead of the other?
Well, yes, potentially. And what I'm going to do right now is just look on my computer. It is in February, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
February 1st.
February 1st, okay.
All
okay.
Right. Now, that's your neck of the woods.
Yes, it is. Yes, it
so,
is.
so, hey, aren't you supposed to know about that stuff?
No,
Let's see.
I just know I'm going to be there when they tell me on CNN that I'll race out there. But
Well, the moon will be in Scorpio that day. And in mundane astrology, which is the astrology of worldly events, the moon governs the general public. The Scorpio moon should be helpful for Hillary Clinton. And of course, that's all relative. Mr. Trump is a sun sign Gemini, so he would be less impacted by the moon's placement. But Mercury, the ruling planet of Gemini, is in good shape on February 1st. And remember, these campaigns now go on for so long, and there are so many different milestone dates in the course of the year and a half of the campaign.
right.
It really, in part has to do with the chart for the United States. July 4th, 1776 is the one I use, and
Uh-huh.
just getting a sense of the pulse of the country and where people. We're such a huge and diverse country that it's been a part of our history that there's always been a certain level of discord. Even democracy itself, is in a sense dependent on people's lively discussion of issues and events.
Right. So, so first you said that Trump being a Gemini, or no, being, what is he again?
He's a sun sign Gemini with Leo rising, and
Ah,
the moon in Sagittarius. He was born at a full moon. And curiously enough, this is really, I think, so ironic. Trump was one of those people who kept bringing up President Obama's birth
birth
certificate,
chart. Yeah.
and whether in fact he was, legally qualified to be president. And when folks then in turn questioned Mr. Trump's birth validity, he produced an actual copy of his birth certificate, which included the time of birth, and it was an hour different from the one that most astrologers had been using.
Really? Why would
So,
that be?
well, I'm not sure. People try and ferret out these types of records, and in some states, like my own of Massachusetts, birth records are public, and anybody can walk in to the various cities and town halls, or
We need to pay more attention to maybe making major elections on the people that are really making the decisions, which is those people in the Congress. But anyway, so how does okay, so it looks favorable for right now, especially for Bernie Sanders. It looks like it may have a boost for Hillary because it's in Scorpio on caucus day.
well, the moon,
And
yes, the moon will give her a greater personal gravitas. It adds depth to the person, at least as we perceive them.
and as far as Trump goes, it could be a boost for him on the Republican side then?
Well, yeah, I don't sense, from what I'm watching in the news and seeing on television or astrologically, that there is a major hiccup between now and the caucuses. It's what, a couple of weeks away. It's not far.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, in mid-April, one of the important dates to watch, especially if you're a Hillary fan, is on April the 17th, that Mars, the ancient ruling planet of her sun sign Scorpio, begins a retrograde that lasts until late June. And I think
What
this
does
is that
so that's
retrograde.
that's bad, isn't it?
Well, retrogrades I think are often misunderstood, but I think in this case, it's not going to have a positive impact on her or her campaigning.
Okay. Well, I have to say, as much as you're for Bernie, I'm for Hillary. So I just want to see a woman get in there. I would just like to see that happen. And I understand that there's lots of things that are the same old for people, but um, I don't know. I like both of them. So actually, as either of them would be fine.
Well, time will tell. I have my personal preferences. I believe that it's really important that there's a seismic shift in the role our government plays, and I desperately want it to serve the vast majority of people rather than the super wealthy. I think this has been disastrous for us on so many levels.
I think you're probably right. What about the whole world at this particular time, Eric? What are you seeing basically as any highlights or anything that just in people in general, in the mentality or the influences?
Well, in many respects, um, two of the more important alignments have been with us since at least last year. One of them I've spoken about on your show several times, the testing
Yes.
angle between Uranus, the planet of revolutions, and of the egalitarian, we're all in this together spirit, has been at odds with Pluto, a planet connected with super wealthy, super powerful, super militaristic, and even dictator types of people. So, the battle lines, much like the last time these two tangled back in the early 1930s, very similar. People are comparing Trump to Hitler. We have this rise of nationalism in places, European countries. We're seeing more far-right candidates emerge as a response to the migration of people from the Middle East seeking asylum. That alignment will continue, even though the last exact square was back in March of 2015. They're close enough still that there are aftershocks, much like an earthquake, also associated with Uranus, and they'll continue to be close enough to destabilize people's lives and challenge our institutions all throughout this calendar year. The other big
Wow.
one, the other big one is a testing angle between Saturn and Neptune, and at various times during the calendar year 2016, Jupiter will be a part of that equation as well. Jupiter just began a retrograde in Virgo a few days back. But Saturn testing Neptune is particularly troublesome. It raises issues about our food and water supply, which folks out west are certainly becoming more aware of.
Yeah, that's
And in
scary.
Michigan, we're seeing in Flint, this big whole city being contaminated with lead water poisoning.
That
Um,
is so. When I hear about that, so that means that all the children that were drinking water from that supply, what does that mean for them?
Well, I'm not an expert on lead poisoning, but as I understand it, it has a major impact on kids' brain development. And so, it diminishes IQs. It, I think, can create other illnesses as well. And, the fall of the Roman Empire has been attributed to lead poisoning in the water, uh,
Really?
by some historians. So,
Wow.
it's very serious, and it was, as I understand it, excuse me, a business decision, which really underscores this conflict between trying to give certain services that have been performed by government agencies over to the private sector. When profit enters into good governance, we're seeing a real breakdown in our roads, our bridges, our schools, our prisons.
Yeah. Well, prisons have been massively overcrowded for a long time, but I feel that for a lot of I don't know about you, but I think if you are empathic, or if you have if you're a sensitive in any way, at this time, people are carrying such a heavy load. So many countries are getting hold of nuclear power. So many countries are starting to be showing signs of this massive desire to be seen as a America 2 or America 3, or you know what I mean, with the same energy and power. And it's frightening. It really is. It just seems like, and now I've heard something about Russia having some new weapons or something that they're pointing, and it's like everything is on the brink of some kind of vomit of disastrous power, it seems like.
Well, I think one of the interesting points I want to not just cast this pallor of gloom about the astrology.
Oh, no, yeah.
There are some really brilliant opportunities that we all, I hope will take advantage of. One of them is, the other side of Uranus, besides being a chaotic revolutionary force, it's the technology planet. And it was discovered during the American Revolution when, the founding fathers finally said, we don't need a king. We can figure out how to run our own lives. In some instances, I liken Uranus to a 17-year-old who comes home and yells at her mom and says, "You can't tell me what to do. I'm 17."
Okay.
But
that's interesting.
It's in a very solid alignment for several months going forward now with Saturn, a planet of tradition and respect for the past. So there's really an opportunity to bridge certain gaps, whether it's a generation gap, a technology gap. I think all of us need to look to bringing the best of ourselves, our history, our past experiences into the future and embrace, the promise of technology, whether it's for, connecting with other people or understanding our common humanity better. Technology can do wonderful things. We're using it to do this show, and it's pretty far out.
Yeah, it is. Wow. I haven't heard that in a long time.
Well, I'm an old hippie. What can I say?
Yeah. Well, why don't we take a new caller that I haven't seen ever before, and his name is Russ, and he's from Ohio. So, Russ, how are you today?
Excellent, Anne-Marie. How are you doing today?
Doing great. What can you give Eric your birth sign and your time of date, or your birth information?
The date of birth, the time you were born, if you know it, and the place of birth, Russ. That would be great.
I was October 21st, 1965, so I just had a big number here a couple months ago. It was 9:36 a.m. in Cleveland.
Great. Thank you. I'll need a minute to...
And I'll read for you while he's doing the doot, 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 doot. So, Russ, what is it specifically that you're wondering about? Or would you like me just to pick up what I see?
Recent and upcoming job situations, too. I had a job I didn't like. I lost last week. Got an interview. I had 2 phone interviews today with one place. And I've got an actual in-person interview with them Friday.
Okay. Well, I show you the victor, and I show you in the next 21 weeks with progress concerning any avenue of creative potential. Now, it says baby steps right now, and that basically if you're looking for employment that will make you feel fulfilled, from my angle, everything here looks as if between now and the next 21 weeks, you're going to see real developments. So I'm just going to do a real quick one here, Russ, just in general. I'll go quickly so that Eric can take over. And one of the things that comes through, and I don't know what this is about, it's showing me that you've had some complications in the recent past with somebody or something that you've lost communication with. There seems to be a sense that it's kind of push and pull with somebody in your life. And that there is this feeling that just when you get an edge on a specific, and I don't know if it's a romantic interest or if it's somebody that's a family member, but it shows a sense that somebody seems to be laying the law, and that there is a feeling that this is causing some chaos and a sense of, just like what Eric said, you can't tell me what to do type energy. And it shows, though, that from what I'm looking at, basically between now and the next 21 weeks, as I said, if there's been any issue about progress and you not stepping up to the plate or doing something that someone else thinks would be right for you, I feel that this is going to change, may not change for the better for this specific person, but it's going to change the fact that you're buckling up, you're settling down, and you're going in a direction that's good for you. So, not to say screw the person that may be pressuring you, but just that you're getting your act together more. So, Eric, make some sense of this for me.
Well, Russ, astrologically, you are a sun sign Libra, you have Scorpio rising, and you have the moon in Virgo. You have basically begun or are transitioning from one 7-year chapter of your life into a new 7-year chapter. And you really should think about your long-term plans and needs. If you can anticipate them, all the better. I think luck is with you. It feels to me like this job change is long overdue. As a child of the 60s, you certainly, are familiar with that old bumper sticker, question authority.
That came up for me too, yeah.
And, there is a certain part of you that I think you need to tone down a bit. It's probably mellowed with age already. Certain relationships, it may be, friends at work you're saying goodbye to, but it's time to phase those out and focus on fewer but more rewarding commitments. I think that's very important for you. There's a certain element, very mixed here, between feeling liberated and also very nervous and worried about your future and how things are going to work out. And I want to tell you, it's all going to work out fabulously. You should relax. Something better truly is coming to you. And I would even encourage you to be a little selective. As I said right off the bat here, think about where you want to be 7 years from now, who you want to be working with, how far you want to commute, what kind of benefits you're looking for, the whole ball of wax, as much as you can think it out. It's really a very profound time to give some thought to that, as well as what you've learned, what you've experienced, and how you've grown as a person.
Oh, that sounds excellent. Yeah, definitely a lot of thinking. I did have somebody suggest something that I got no interest in at all, and they were sort of pressuring me into taking it just to have a paycheck coming in. But but this other one was definitely that the one I got the interview for Friday is definitely something I've done in the past. Would be a better fit. So
sounds right.
I'm getting a really good feeling about you hooking up in a situation that's really going to suit you well. The global picture, because Uranus and Aries, the opposite to Libra, is slowly moving into an opposition to your sun over the next couple of years, you're going to still be a little edgy about job security. And you also want to pay some attention. There's really nothing much you can do to totally avoid that. You just have to get used to it. But if changes come, they will be for the better. You want to pay special attention to 2 areas of your body. One is your heart, and the other is your back and the spine in general. If you haven't had a checkup in a while, something to look into.
Oh, sounds good. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
All right. So, Eric, why don't you give us some history? I've been boasting about you, and I would like to, I know that we have discussed about, your history, and you are part of a spiritual magazine, correct?
Well, I write for a magazine called Spirit of Change. I don't know that I would call it a spiritual magazine, but it really encompasses a wide range of new age interests, environmental interests.
It's a great
Um,
magazine.
yeah, it really is. It's online at spiritofchange.org. I've been their astrologer since the last millennium, 1999. Um, and I have a column in there, and on the website, a daily forecast. You can find out what's going on, why you're having a great day or a bad hair day, and even look ahead. There's I think there's a button you can click on and see the whole month's worth of forecasts, so you can plan a party or what have you. And I got into this, many moons ago, quite by accident. It's not for the faint of heart. But generally, I'm an astrological counselor. I work with people getting through their day-to-day issues and their life changes, and hopefully help them make better choices.
And you have some amazing reviews as well. This isn't the only magazine that you have kind of gotten into. Wasn't there another one that was kind of a romance or some kind of...
Oh, yeah, that was one of my clients wrote a bestseller called 1,001 Ways to Be Romantic. This was about almost 25 years ago now, probably 25, yeah. Greg Godek was the author of that book, and he was kind enough to include me in the Starstruck section, number 865, I think I was. So I've done a lot of readings for couples at every stage of the relationship dance. So that's another area where I'd say I'm pretty qualified to counsel people.
By stage of the romance dance, what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean from first date to bitter divorce.
Oh, wow. So, when someone wants a romance prediction or whatever, you take both of them. You ask the same thing you did the client or the person on the radio station just a minute ago.
Right, just like I asked Russ his date, time, place of birth, and then I look to see what the strengths of the partnership might be, as well as the challenges they're likely to face.
Mm-hmm. And can you help them kind of like a marriage counselor then, sort of, too?
In some cases, I would say, people have gotten back to me and said I've helped them stay together. In other cases, I think I've helped them separate. But, we all make choices. I think the important thing is to make these decisions with as much compassion and awareness, for ourselves and our partners as we possibly can.
What about the Powerball thing going on right now? What do you think of all that?
Well, I always laugh about that because I tell people, if I could do that, I wouldn't be talking to you right now.
I know that. Yeah, and there's some very sneaky ways that people ask about their Powerball numbers. For instance, I had one that called and asked for her spirit guide's dream interpretation of numbers that were in a dream. And it was like, sounds an awful lot like Powerball numbers, but that's not my specialty. So I had to, deny that one and send a refund. But it is a really crazy time.
Well, I think it goes back to something I touched on earlier about the U.S. chart. I believe that there's this really, at this point, overlooked power within the vast numbers of people in this country. We are over 300 million people. And yeah, we're not as big as China, but that's still a lot of people. And the day our country was born, as I mentioned, the country has a birth chart, just like people have their individual birth charts. The moon was in Aquarius, a freedom-loving, very accepting sign, and a sign connected with the planet Uranus, which currently is harmonizing from Aries to our natal moon in Aquarius. And this really was the primary reason why I've been awaiting somebody like Bernie Sanders. I didn't know who it might be, but somebody who championed many of the, progressive causes, the truly looking out for people with things like Medicare and Social Security, instead of making these things out to be some kind of government perpetrated evil, which certain right-wing candidates like to do. I personally think, having an educated, qualified country makes a lot of sense. And I don't really want to drive down the street, through a crowd of lepers, per se. We need
is he trying to get rid of Obamacare?
Who, Bernie Sanders?
Yes, someone was saying that on CNN.
I think that is an outright falsehood, because I've never heard anything like that. If anything, he is pro-single payer, expanding Medicare so that it includes everybody and takes that burden off of corporations. We're the only democracy, in the world, maybe outside of India, that, requires businesses to provide health care for their citizens. All of the European democracies, the government does that. And we're already doing it for our, military service people and our seniors. So what Mr. Sanders is saying is we can really reduce costs and provide much better health care in this country. We're not getting the best results by far compared to, I think, in a lot of things, birth death rates and other, costs of knee replacement or all these various things cost 10, 15, 20 times what they cost in these other countries. And we're not appreciably, healthier or better off for the huge amounts that we're spending on HMOs and, all these other insurance agencies.
I think some people mistakenly think that Obamacare is the same as welfare, but I have a son that has a condition that he would not be able to get any insurance if he did not have Obamacare. And it certainly doesn't mean that he is on welfare, because he makes a good income in the holistic field, but he also has to pay, they have packages like the gold package and all that. He still, for family, pays a really hefty amount. But I think a lot of people are convinced that it's all about welfare, and it's not.
Well, they talk about Social Security as if it's an entitlement where it's funded by people who work. And, I've been paying into it for decades. And for somebody to tell me it's, and I've been largely self-employed as an astrologer, so it's not like my employer is paying even part of it. To then come around and tell me it's an entitlement, when you're serving in Congress and you've got the best health care money can buy, and you work, 60 days a year or whatever it is, it's totally insulting to me.
Yeah.
I believe, health care for profit is inherently evil. Most states, you have, for example, Blue Cross Blue Shield, you have a CEO in each state making millions of dollars of salary. And why is that? Why can't we deliver health care like they do in England or France? If people want to have private insurance, fine. But the costs of drugs have been one of those things that, is a product of this square between Neptune and Saturn. Neptune rules pharmaceuticals as well as, water supplies. And, we've seen this young hedge fund manager buying up drug companies and taking an $11 bill. Yeah, the next day it's $700. This is insane. Most countries in Europe would simply not allow this to happen. End discussion. But for some reason, it's like the business community is like the Wild West. If we have the money, and we own it, we're going to extort, and just charge these outrageous prices. I think it's morally wrong. It should be legally wrong.
So you are also a teacher, right? I mean, you teach. You go from place to place and also teach astrology, or what exactly do you teach when you're doing your?
I give classes and workshops. I'll be giving one tomorrow night on the major trends of 2016. That would be local here in southeastern Massachusetts at one of my favorite places called the Enchanted Fox in Medway, Mass. Kind of a new age emporium. and they have a yoga studio, and in the upstairs part of their building, and I'll be teaching there to a gathering of folks. Mostly I work teaching in the Boston, southern New England area. I've gone up to New Hampshire on occasion. I've been invited to teach in Maine. I sometimes teach out of my home, just classes where I literally train people from the beginning about planets, signs, houses, all the building blocks of astrology, and get them up to speed reading charts.
So you used to read charts the old-fashioned way, right? I mean, the old-fashioned way was everybody just kind of worked it out on paper, I remember. And how has that changed?
Well, sometime in the late 1970s, folks started working on creating software programs to calculate the charts. Before that time, you had to have 3 separate books and understanding of some complex mathematical procedures in order to create a proper chart. I struggled with it for years. I finally took a class just in chart calculation, and within a few years, the programs became widespread, and I just didn't want to spend the time that it took to do all this math with a calculator and figure out the charts. So there are many companies that are providing software for astrologers. There are, if you Google free astrology charts, you can be led to various sites. And some of them actually have some decent basic interpretations of those birth charts. For more sophisticated...
Then again, where would you come in as being able to offer more quality?
Well, I think myself or any other experienced astrologer, I shouldn't say any other, I believe in the work I do. I think I have a gift. And there are other very talented astrologers out there. Certainly I'm not the only one. But there's a gestalt, there's an energy struck between client and astrologer. One of you may remember, my first teacher was a rather famous astrologer from Boston named Isabel Hickey, and one of the things that really impressed me about her was her capacity in just a few minutes to really alter the course of a person's life by what she had to say, what she understood of astrology, and how she could in a moment really make this big difference, in most cases very positive for people, getting them on track with their spiritual purpose in life, or giving them deeper understanding of why they were in the situation they were in. These types of things not every astrologer can do. Certainly the written reports, generally as good as they have gotten, they're not going to provide that same alchemy. There's really a magic that occurs in a good session. You know that as a reader. There are some aha moments, we might call them.
Yeah, I often say that people have the ability to go into or to do a tarot reading by clicking on cards on the computer. However, to me, there's a huge difference between the energy shared between a client and their reader and the client and a machine.
Absolutely.
And I just don't see that, and I can understand if you are truly powerful to emanate your energy into that machine, to be able to pick up, to have it pick up where your life is, as if it has an intuitive brain or an intuitive consciousness. Well, okay, but it is my feeling that having that specific warm gift, as you talk about, is always kind of the difference between going to see a band or going to a wedding and hearing radio, or you know what I'm saying, a disc jockey, and hearing live music.
I think that's a good analogy. But Getting back to the more personal work of a session, whether you're seeing a card reader or a palmist or an astrologer, we're multidimensional beings. And I think there is something in the personal contact between two human beings that, opens up avenues that we wouldn't otherwise be able to explore.
In the same way people go to church or go to a spiritual convention, and that energy that people share creates almost like a nuclear explosion of just spiritual, kind of, right?
Well, I think we tap into that in group settings in a different way. Certainly,
Okay.
When people come together with a like-minded intention to pray, to heal, to save the whales, whatever the righteous cause might be, then I think there's a magic in that. And we have a little bit of that, between the wise counselor and the client. We have the potential to basically invite magic to happen.
Yeah, I think so too. Have you been, you have a new dog now, don't you?
We don't. We lost a very special to us. Everybody's dog is the greatest. But we have one dog. We had two for many years. But back in August, we lost our firstborn son, the wonderful Mr. Dudley.
Well, I saw on the picture or something, I think, on your on Facebook, and your Facebook page, where you can have people that will come and look at your predictions and your things, is what now again?
It's Eric Linter. Pretty simple.
Just Eric Linter. Yep. And is it public, or do people have to friend you?
They would have to friend me.
Okay. And so I think that anybody that wants to tune into that and see some of those amazing, things that you talk about that are so uplifting, I really enjoy them.
Oh, thank you, Anne. Yeah. It's nice to hear that.
Yeah. So if I look at, is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you feel specifically in the universe or in the consciousness of the future, let's say year, that we can look at with hope? I know you have said it's time to have more hope, but what can we offer people? And then I'd like to end the show with the robe of light prayer as well, that you do so wonderfully. But what is there specifically? Maybe, how about education?
Well, I hear, because I'm not directly involved with what's going on in the schools, but I have clients who are teachers and involved in going into certain schools, again, mostly in New England. But I understand there is a kind of new awakening of interest in teaching critical thinking.
And what do you mean by that, critical thinking?
Some of the charter schools in Boston are directly addressing this. What I mean by that is, in the last 10 or 20 years, I think increasingly there's been a push to prepare children so that they test well, which, boils down to repeating information that they've heard, rather than being able to listen to something, analyze it, and make sense of it. That's what I mean by critical thinking. I mentioned earlier the square that's ongoing between Saturn and Neptune. This is a tricky aspect. You may have seen one of my messages on Facebook. I said, don't believe these politicians for the next month. On Thanksgiving Day, the square was exact. And it's a classic signature for people not telling the truth. I said we might as well call this the season of prevarication. I didn't want to be impolite and say liars. But we really need to, question motives and look beneath surface appearances. Whether it's Bernie Sanders, whether it's Hillary, whether it's Donald Trump, or, any of the other candidates, they say things that are half true. They say things that are deliberately misleading about usually their rivals. But we can check, their records. We can really see how they voted and where they, really have stood on the issues like, equal pay for women or, preserving the environment. Too often these people, are in the pockets of big business and they just sell out again and again. Yes, there are hopeful, signs in the stars. The trine between Saturn and Uranus in some ways offsets the square to Neptune, but we still have to be on guard when we make an agreement, when we sign a contract. We need to read carefully and know what it is we're getting into. We want to try and deal with people who really have impeccable reputations, whether we're talking about friendship or potential employee or employer. Do your homework. It's pretty easy to, make a few clicks online and see if there are complaints about an organization or a doctor or some other supplement you're considering taking.
Would you say, and I don't know that you can look this, I don't know how this works, but would you say that the energy of America is looking for, I don't know astrologically how you do this, but can you see that within 2017, does that seem to be a year that demands softness or a year that demands hardcore?
I think our country is heading towards a rebirth. It may
Do
be.
you?
I do, and I have to tell you, there's an astrological correspondence to this. Back in 1776, Pluto was at 27 degrees of Capricorn. I'm talking about July 4th. Today, Pluto is again in Capricorn. It has a 248-year orbit around the sun. We're roughly now about 6 years away from our first American Pluto return. And many empires have collapsed under the weight of this transit.
Oh, great.
Others have reorganized. And I'm hopeful that there will be a healthy reorganization. Will it be painless? I doubt it. But if we get back to core principles and, we're a democracy. It's naive to think that 90% of the people are going to agree about Social Security or health care or, women's rights. But we have to have a certain basic respect for majority rule. When elections are rigged, when the votes aren't counted accurately, when minorities aren't allowed to vote, we've got serious problems.
So you feel that 2017 is a baby step towards the rebirthing?
Well, I think we're leading up to, in the early 2020s, a time of momentous choices. But I think we're seeing a kind of, various battles and issues that they're not going to go away. The question of clean air or water to drink, a living wage. I'm basically a power to the people kind of guy.
I know you are, Eric.
If we start taxing the billionaires, they're still going to be the richest people in the country. But the country can't function without money for bridges and the idea that Pfizer is now relocating their headquarters to Ireland so they don't have to pay taxes. I think legally, they need to be penalized for that. They can't just walk. But what's happened is corporations now are more powerful than individual countries. They are the ones who write the laws, and they have these politicians who are kind of in the pockets of these business people, keeping up this charade that there's still some kind of real working government happening. But here we go with our chickens are being shipped to China to get processed. I don't know anybody who knows about that who's happy about it.
Well, we have a poultry plant right here in Storm Lake that I hope that they aren't going to be sent away but there's been some terrible flus and some terrible things that have caused work to crash around some very secure places in Iowa right now, simply because mysterious bird flus, mysterious things that they still haven't laid their finger on what it's caused by. So would you say then there for a while I was really getting into the people who were investors and things like that was talking about what to invest money in. And they were talking about this huge financial crash that's going to devastate America like it's never seen, and more doom and gloom. Have you in any way seen astrologically that there is anything like that coming?
Well, back in 2008, in anticipation of Pluto returning to Capricorn, many astrologers, the ones who specialized in the financial markets, were predicting a major downturn. And they did that every year for about 5 years, waiting for the kind of the shoe to drop, but it never dropped.
There was in 2008 probably, or whatever.
Right, we had the bailout, and we've had a recovery for 7 years, which unfortunately has not translated into good-paying jobs. Mostly those have disappeared. Global economists talk about the fact that overall there's a much bigger middle class now than there was 30 years ago. They just happen to be in India and China and these other developing markets. But
Eric? We got
Yes.
2 minutes and 23 seconds. I want you to give the robe
The robe
of light prayer.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I remain hopeful. And, I think when the American people have good leadership and understand the issues that, in the end, we make the good choices. So let me share with you a prayer that I learned from Isabel Hickey. She in turn learned it from a wonderful woman spiritualist in Boston. And it goes like this. And thank you, Anne-Marie, for having me on the show again. And for you listeners for joining in tonight. The robe of light is a wonderful prayer of healing and protection. It's short, and here it is. I clothe myself in a robe of light composed of the love, power, and wisdom of God, not only for my own protection, but so that all who see it or come in contact with it will be drawn to God and healed. Amen.
Amen. One last question. Was Reagan's wife into astrology?
Yes, and so was he.
So him being the best president, supposedly, that the Republicans think we've ever had, may have had a lot to do with astrology, didn't it?
Well, you have to give their astrologer some credit. She got him in and out of Washington without major, incidents. I mean, he got shot, so some people can say that's on her. But he seemed to, the mud from the different scandals, nothing stuck.
There was something going on good there. All right, honey. Thank you so much, and I always love having you here. This will be a great show to play back when on my absentee days, just to look back and see, compare what went on. And I'm hoping that we'll have a great presidential election. And I'm going to have you back and tell us.
Yeah, hopefully we can talk about the election closer to November. We'll see.
We shall.
It's going to be interesting.
Bye, Eric.
Have a good night.
Psychic radio, holistic radio, spiritual radio. This is AchieveRadio.com.